The world of video games has grown to become a giant in the world of popular culture. The landscape has become something completely unrecognizable to the people who originally plugged Pong into their television set way back in the 70s, and now it's become something completely unrecognizable to even the players who plugged in a PlayStation 2 back in 2006. In today's video, we're going to go over one of modern video games' biggest lies, so sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. First up, video games have changed, and the way we track their popularity has changed too. Back in the good old days, and by the good old days I mean the days when I was good at video games, we used to track how many players purchased the game in order to track how many players are playing the game. I mean, the system made perfect sense. If you purchased the game, then you obviously played the game. And if someone were to ask you, did you play this game? And you bought it, you were probably going to say yes, regardless of how many hours you put into the game. Moreover, what was really nice about tracking how many players played the game based on sale numbers is we had an exact number to go off of. It was very simple to see how many copies were sold and how much money was made. A company called the NDP used to get sales numbers directly from the retail stores who sold the game, and then they would display those numbers on their website. It was really as simple as typing in the game's title on the website if you ever wanted to see how many players were playing the game. But now, things are much different. Games and player counts cannot be measured by how many copies they sold. While that data will still tell the story of how much revenue the game generated, it will do nothing to prove player count, because most games now are a service, not a single release game. Games now are meant to keep the player playing for months after their release, and not only to keep playing the story mode, but to keep playing online every day. So when a player purchases a game way back in November, but the game is built to have them still be playing in March, the fact that they bought the game does not prove that they're still an active player on that game. And to add even more confusion to this puzzle, many of today's most popular titles, Call of Duty, Warzone, Fortnite, Valorant, PUBG, and Apex Legends, are all free-to-play titles, meaning that players do not actually have to purchase the game, meaning there isn't even any sales data to look at, meaning that it's completely unreliable source for measuring player count. So how can we accurately see player count in today's video game world? How do we look at a player count in a live game now? Looking at live player stats now is very difficult, as most game developers do not release that information very accurately, and we'll explain why in a minute. But there are some websites that use all sorts of data from games, streaming sites, sales numbers if applicable, and other types of data to roughly be able to see how many players are playing a game at one time. Sites like Player Counter claim that they have done their best to tally up all of the gamers currently online on any given popular title, but even they give a disclaimer on their site saying, "We are not perfect, but our team is doing the best we can at tracking. If you can program the algo better, step up. Walk a day in our shoes before throwing shade." Of course, they're simply saying that they're doing their best to bring us accurate data on something that gamers like to know. It's a fact that was once not so hard to find, but is seemingly impossible to find now. Why is it so hard to find an active player count on some games? Some of you may remember back in 2010, one of the world's most popular games, Call of Duty Black Ops, always had an active player counter at the bottom of the multiplayer screen. Not only that, but it illuminated parts of the world to indicate which parts of the world had the most current active players. It was an unnecessary feature, but it was sort of cool to see which countries were putting in the most hours on the double XP weekend. This trend of showing us how many players were playing the game at any given moment continued in the COD franchise up until Call of Duty Ghost, when the trend all of a sudden stopped. We could no longer see the amount of players playing the game at any given moment. Fans were surprised and asked where the feature went. It took a while to get a straight answer out of the developers of the game, but eventually it was revealed by Activision that the op player count was no longer shown because there were more players playing the previous game in the title than the current game. That's right, more players went back to Call of Duty Black Ops 2 instead of playing Ghost. Honestly, what I wouldn't give to go back to Black Ops 2. You don't even know. Anyway, Activision felt that if this were to be easy to access knowledge that was literally advertised by the developers of the game, it would lead to online backlash and thus poor sales numbers. Activision wanted to cover up the fact that their new game was beginning to die, so they simply withheld the player count. But now, with gaming in the place it's in, companies are starting to follow in Activision's footsteps and lie about the player count in a way that's going to seriously hurt gaming if it continues. Developers are lying to all of us. Sea of Thieves is one of the most popular MMOs out there today, and rightfully so. However, its developer, Rare, is not happy with the player count. The game was highly anticipated and received some backlash right out of the gate, as it was obviously a predatory game, with systems that punished players for trying to play the game and rewarded players that played like pirates or trolls, depending on your intentions. Anyway, the game did not end up doing quite as well as they thought, and the player retention was in a bad state. So the game decided to make a new commercial to advertise the fact that they had made some changes to make the game less abusive. In In that commercial, which debuted at E3, they said, "Join over 30 million players." The statement sounds impressive to someone who's debating about joining the game, as now they can say, clearly this game is still actively being played by 30 million players. But that is obviously a lie. What that number refers to is the amount of accounts that have logged into the game during its life cycle at any point. This number's not referring to the current number of active players or even a peak player count. It's simply stating that over 30 million players have played the game at least once. And even that statement is potentially untrue because it's only counting account logins, but it does not exclude accounts that are made by the same person, which means that one person could have made 4 accounts, which does not mean that 4 different players have played the game. It's just one player owning multiple accounts. Obviously, that's tough for the developers to measure and actually pinpoint, but the point is, developers are doing whatever they can to only put impressive-sounding numbers in front of gamers so that they'll believe that certain games aren't dead. Dead game is the newest way of saying that a game has a lower player count and is falling out of favor. So, to avoid that, developers are trying to hide the player number in an effort to stay out of the dead game conversation. However, this whole notion of dead games and pinning a game's worth on its active player count is running gaming. Players are missing out on all sorts of amazing games simply because the internet says that the game is dead. And because the developers won't publish the actual player count, they have no way of disproving the people who claim that a game is dead. Players need to stop only playing the games that are deemed popular just for the sake that they're what everyone is playing at the moment. Find the games that you enjoy and play them. And if that happens to be the popular game at the time, then enjoy. And if it isn't, also enjoy. And developers need to be more honest with the players. Show the player count, show the active online users, and own up to the decisions that you made to get to this point. If you're unhappy with the player count, fix the game. Stop trying to hide in the shadows. If you make a great game, players will come. That's all we have for you guys today on the channel. Thank you all so much for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you all in the next one.